YCS Atlanta 2018, I believe, is still currently going underway with the top 32 cut if you're watching this video currently and as of this moment. But there has been an update to the Konami blog, and they have given us a list of all of the decks that have made the top 32 cut. And we have, well, I suppose my the traditional pie chart of the event is now up on screen, and you can see what decks have topped. So I guess for this video, I'm going to probably just talk about my thoughts on this, and I think that obviously much of this discussion is going to be centered around Magician and Pendulum, obviously, considering how it has taken over half of the top cut spots. So yes, that is going to make for an interesting point. But overall, general thoughts, for the most part, quite unsurprising, and also at the same time slightly surprising that so many different other decks managed to top as well. And it's also funny to consider that, just think about the number of other different archetypes that maybe just made it onto the bubble and were probably could have potentially topped other than these other decks here. So who knows what other kinds of decks could have been in the top cut as well. So I think that's always something interesting to think about as well, is like what could have been had they just like won one more matchup, or even just like the tiebreakers were a little bit more in favor. So who knows, because it does look like, I think in general, it is a very diverse format if you are ignoring Magician. But then again, is that really a diverse format? Because really what we have here is Magician and Anti-Magician, I think, is really what is sort of being designed here. So, yeah, without further ado, let's just jump into this. Feel free to Alt-Tab, look away, play your games, or sit on Facebook and just have this as background noise. That's cool. That's why I like doing these videos, because that's the kind of stuff that I enjoy watching personally on YouTube. So we have Magicians. Let's begin with the Magician discussion. So coming out of the last ban list with Double Iris being hit, I think that was a very, very strong hit for the deck, because I think that trap is what makes a lot of this deck's plays very, very powerful. Because I think that if we look at the deck, even without the trap, you were still able to make things like an Omega, a rank 4, and like maybe a Vortex Dragon. There's combos going around now where you can make like a rank 8 and stuff, and basically you're just doing all of these kind of plays centered around the Starving Venom or the Vortex Dragon, and you're able to make these amazing first turn boards. But on top of that, if you have the trap there as well, is what makes this extremely unfair, because not only are you trying to play through 2 negates or 3 negates, maybe like a negate and a hand trap, you also have the searchable trap as well, and the trap was very easy to get to when Double Iris was legal. And the interesting thing is that even if they were to like limit Double Iris, it wouldn't have done anything at all, really. So anyway, sort of past tense aside, I think going into the new format, going into a format that is completely undefined, where it's sort of just been blown wide open, because the best deck was undecidedly like unequivocally was considered Spiral. Without a shadow of a doubt, Spiral was the best deck versus basically any other kind of anti-Spiral deck. Now, however, that has just been blown out of the water, and we have, well, I think it goes to show that Spiral is without a doubt not the best deck, and now we have Magician taking over half the top cut spots. And I think that for the most part, that is a little surprising. I think that for the most part, most people would probably assume that Magician and Pendulums in general would be a very strong contender and a very powerful deck going forward, and I would have thought so as well, but I didn't think it would dominate this much, I think is what kind of has taken me aback here. I expected Magicians to perhaps take something about a third of the top cut spots. That was sort of my prediction and sort of guesstimation for this event. I would have expected to see Pendulum take about a third, and then maybe honestly like so more accurately I should say like Magicians take about a third, and then like other Pendulum decks. So I was genuinely expecting more Metal Foes, as we see here, but there's only one Metal Foe variant that managed to top. I genuinely was expecting Zephyr as well to be in the tournament, and that's just nowhere to be seen at all here. I didn't even see it in the top tables on the Konami blog as we were progressing through the event. Not even at the top tables were any Zephyr decks being played, and I suppose that's mostly just because Magicians kind of do what that deck does, but basically better, and that's completely understandable. So yeah, that's I think that's very interesting. Now, one thing I would like to say about Magicians before I move on to the rest of the deck is that This, in a sense, is slightly annoying because while I don't think that it is problematic for X deck to take half the top cut spots, what I am not really fond of is when X deck takes, over half the top deck spots, and it's such a very specific type of deck, and that being pendulum deck. Because now what happens is that people will then go on to evolve the meta, and throughout the next events, YCS Bochum and the UDS, what will happen is that you will now have Magician players jumping on the bandwagon. I wouldn't really say bandwagon, more so just continuing to play Magician, because obviously they are getting confirmation here that there is plenty of raw data here to suggest that Magician is the best deck. And they will continue to work on their deck and try and get an edge in the mirror and stuff like that. But also it's important to understand that everyone who doesn't want to play Magician or isn't interested in playing Magician for the next events, they are going to be playing decks and playing cards and designing their deck in such a way to beat Magician. And that's a very big problem, because there's nothing wrong with obviously building your deck to try beat the best deck. In fact, that's very positive in a sense, but that's why I don't like it when it's pendulum, because now you're going to be seeing very frustrating cards in the format being played. You're going to be seeing main decked anti-spells potentially, or perhaps in a lot of cases D-barrier being played as well. And you're going to see more paleo playing play, because that has like a very good Magician matchup. Very good pendulum matchup rather. So you're going to see more like rises in these cards and these type of decks. And I think that as well, another factor to take into consideration for people who aren't so interested in the super meta decks but just want to sort of try and do their best with a casual competitive deck, that's going to hurt you as well, because Magician is the best deck. When Magician is the best deck, anti-pendulum cards become popular, and a lot of anti-pendulum cards indirectly hurt other decks. So for example, let's say there's a very sort of like a proportionally big niche subculture dedicated to Burning Abyss, which there always is, especially in Europe. There's always quite a significant amount of people playing Burning Abyss, even though it doesn't make the pie charts. There is always going to be, and I'm just using this as an example because I think every YCS will be different, but now you have like a bunch of people who want to play Burning Abyss and play it semi-seriously and try their best and see how far they go. And what you have is now these anti-pendulum cards now being indirectly good against you and hurting your deck, and it's very frustrating to play against something like D-barrier, because now people will be playing things like D-barrier to counteract Magician, and that is going to indirectly hurt decks that have one mechanic in their field, and that, for example, XC, and it's going to hurt. I don't know, if you're a Fluffle player, it's going to severely cripple you as well. And I think that these are just two examples of so many different other decks that indirectly get hit because of Pendulum just being the best deck. You would think Pendulum Burning Abyss, Pendulum Fluffle, Pendulum and Shaddoll, or Pendulum, and any sort of deck that relies on this one strategy of summoning is now indirectly being hit because of, so it's like Magician's fault that I can't play Burning Abyss, for example, okay? So that's one frustrating aspect of why I don't enjoy Pendulum being the best deck. Another thing to consider as well is that as a Magician player and as someone who is competitive with Magicians, you're going to be very frustrated when deck building with Magicians, because now you're going to have to try build your deck to beat the mirror match, and all of the cards which help you beat the mirror match are going to completely suck against decks that are designed to stun Pendulum. So it's going to be very frustrating as a Magician player to play versus all these D-barrier strike decks that are going to start rising in popularity after YCS Atlanta, like Paleozoic, like just generic trap decks. And you're also going to be frustrated in the mirror match because you could be having cards that are designed to help you beat Rogue, but then again, if you're playing against Rogue and you have cards designed to help you beat the mirror, so you see there's this paradox where it's like, if I build my deck to beat Rogue, I'm going to struggle against the mirror. If I build my deck to beat the mirror, I'm going to struggle against Rogue, and it's going to be one of those formats that's very frustrating to deck build in when you're playing such a dominant deck. So that's really my thoughts on Magician, and I think that's probably the most important factor here, is the fact that I think that it's just going to be really frustrating for pretty much everyone when you have something like a one mechanic strategy deck being basically, you know, the best deck. Now for the other decks involved, I really don't have much to say. I think it's quite generic and unsurprising. It's cool to see like Lightsworn's taking 2 spots, Lightsworn's Zombie Dino. I think that's quite interesting. I think maybe the Dino version would probably be a little bit better because I feel like it maybe has a little bit more plays at its disposal than just sort of maybe the standard plant version. Although then again, he could be playing plants. There's no reason why you couldn't play plants in that. So it's hard to tell. I guess we'll just have to wait to see till the deck list. I don't know how you make space in that deck for dinosaurs and plants, and yeah, that deck's just like a mess, like a pile of cards. It's quite a funny deck. It literally is just a pile of cards. Trajico, I think, has an unsurprising showing, but also I'm personally, I expected way more Draco tops. I expected perhaps maybe like 5-ish Draco variants to be able to top, because I think that deck is very good and very strong at going second, and you're not going to have any problem choosing to go second in this one because everyone wants to go first. Yeah, so slightly disappointing. Invoked taking a couple of spots, sort of unsurprising as well. Invoked does tend to sneak in such a format where it is established as anti-meta, and where it is established as a sort of pick against decks that can suffer to hand traps because the engine is so small. And I suppose something else to mention as well, Metalfoes. I actually can't remember if I mentioned it or not, but that deck didn't take anywhere near as many spots as I expected. I was expecting a couple of more. I was expecting more non-Magician Pendulum decks. I was expecting more Metalfoes, more Zephyra, and I didn't expect this many Trickstar. I honestly did not predict a Trickstar top. I feel like Trickstar just doesn't thrive in a meta where it doesn't know what it's going to be playing against, but I suppose it doesn't take a genius to realize that you should be building your deck to beat Pendulum. So, yeah. ABC, Calvin Tahan, yep. Well, what is there to say about that, really? It's just generic anti-meta deck, similar to Invoked and Trickstar in a way, just designed to stop really magicians from playing, is really what I'm going to say about that. It happens. I'm not surprised that it's managed to sneak in as well. And the one Spiral. The Last Resort hit really hurt the deck badly. But I'd be really interested to see what his build is like, because that sounds quite interesting. I'd be very, very curious to, what is your tactic with Spyro now? What is your angle? Like, are you a stun deck? Are you still trying to do combos? Are you still going first? Are you trying to go? Are you still trying to go second? Are you trying to go first? Like, I'm very curious what his strategy and tactic is. So yeah. I've rambled on too much, and I have basically summed up all my thoughts. So if you have watched this far into the video, give me hashtag ATL. If you've watched this far, that's hashtag ATL for Atlanta, so I know you've listened this far. Thanks everyone for watching. This has been my thoughts on YCS Atlanta 2018. See you next time.